The biggest component about today is learning how to be self-aware and observant about the situations and surroundings that you have. Being able to see the threat before the threat actually becomes a physical one towards you. Being able to de-escalate that threat if possible without using physical force, or knowing when physical force is necessary to be able to end that threat. The biggest component about this training today is seeing that this world that we live in right now isn't the world that we lived in 10 years ago. It's a different world of much higher escalated threats coming at us on a regular basis here. Same world in other places of the world. But the fact that we're now having these higher escalations of threats here and being able to recognize them, see them before they get to us, and being able to handle them in the proper manner. Learning how to de-escalate, learning how to escalate, and when to do those things.
And so what are some examples or a situation?
Some of the biggest components that you see nowadays that I can give as examples is the church shootings that happened south of Dallas a couple of years ago, the shooting in Maine, being able to recognize and see these threats. A couple of years ago, there's a video that goes on the internet of a law enforcement officer seeing a disabled veteran who was going to kill people, and he managed to de-escalate that situation by telling him he was a fellow vet, he understands what he's going through. He could see the threat and see that there was the ability to de-escalate it down without having to go to that lethal force option. But knowing that you have to be able to make that decision of going to the lethal force option or not going to the lethal force option is what you have to train. And that's one of the biggest components that's going on here today, is recognizing the threat, what the threat is, and being able to analyze, do I need to escalate or de-escalate?
And is this like a big issue in, say, East Texas, or?
It is becoming more and more and more of an issue throughout the United States. One of the things that I was really getting at was this world in our area has changed. This escalation to de-escalation training is a necessity for all people throughout the world, because this has been a problem all over. Now, as we get more immersed in a violent culture, and as our culture gets more and more violently progressive, we see it more happening and pushing into the rural areas, more happening and pushing out away from major cities into areas such as ours. So having the ability to understand, analyze, and de-escalate is a very, very, very high component.
Okay. And so as for, I guess, this training, are there any other trainings for people to take part in?
Absolutely. So the men and women at CSAT in Nacogdoches, Paul, Hal, Mark Busby, they're part of our speaker panel today, and they do some excellent training on guardian trainings, programs, de-escalation trainings, events where they train you to see it, go forward, stuff like that. I do a training at Shoot Perfect, license to carry pistol training, tactical training. I'm more of on the one-on-one side, they're more on the classroom group side. We work together, we suggest together, we train together, we all know the same techniques and tactics, and we push together to try to provide the best thing we can for East Texas. The citizens here and their safety is really our main concern on why we're bringing all this here. We were lucky enough, absolutely lucky enough, that the Family Crisis Center saw the need. They were able to write this wonderful grant about being able to secure their facility and secure East Texas and make sure that the victims are able to have the best people in place to do this. So the Family Crisis Center of East Texas really brought this training to the public so that way they could help be plugged into the community and the aspects of being able to de-escalate and escalate and all that kind of stuff for threats. If we can figure out a way to cross the barrier between this classroom and the mindset of it can't happen to me, then we really should see a very high escalation in training for the threats. This event in and of itself is the tip of the iceberg as far as what needs to be done for people to be able to see, understand, and move through the problem. Analyze, is this a threat that I need to escalate for or de-escalate for? What is this? And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much that goes into this, and it's one of those things that everybody, even myself, Paul, Mark, we all continually go get education and training for this, because it's not something that's static. It's not something that once you know, you know. It's a continually evolving evolution of threat. And like I said, the world has always been a threatening place, but here in East Texas, we're seeing a change. We're seeing an escalation in threat. Here in the United States, we're seeing an escalation in threat where we haven't before. We're seeing threats from all over the world that have existed for years now coming here. So our world is changing, whereas the rest of the world has been this way. And so now we're seeing a lot of the threats that are coming to us, and now we have to learn how to analyze them.
And are there any tips you'd like to give the public regarding, I know you mentioned those that may feel, oh, well, I don't feel like I'll be in a situation like this. This can't happen to me.
Absolutely. First things first, it can happen to anybody. Everybody in White House Church thought it couldn't happen to them. Everybody in San Antonio thought it couldn't happen to them. Everybody in Las Vegas that was at the country western concert that got shut up, they thought it couldn't happen to them. It can happen at any point, at any time, anywhere. Here in East Texas, in Lufkin, at Cherry's gas station over on Brigay, there was a shooting there 2 years ago. Law enforcement and an assailant got into a shooting right there 2 years ago. There were individuals, just bystanders, standing by as this went on, thought that it could never happen to them. So to think that it can't happen to you is a false sense of security. Just because you live in an East Texas town doesn't mean that you are safe from violence. It can happen anywhere and anytime. Watch people's hands, watch people's waistlines, look for guns, look for somebody that is in the corners watching people coming in and out. Look for jackets in the warm summertime. Look for these things that stand out as not being right. If something flows against the grain of the river, it's because it stands out. So keep your eyes out, look for these things, get training. Get training. That's the biggest thing I can tell you. Call up CSAT, get in one of their classes. Call us up at Shoot Perfect, get in one of our classes. Educate yourself as best as you can. Right now here at Shoot Perfect, we're pairing with Napoli's in Lufkin, one of the local restaurants, and we're doing license to carry classes there. We're trying to bring the masses the training that's needed. The Family Crisis Center, if you call them up and ask them about things, they'll be happy to help you, direct you to things. If you're in a situation where you know you have a threat, where you know you have a problem and you're scared and you just don't know how to do anything, reach out. The Family Crisis Center is here for you all the time. If you have something going on in your life, if these things that I'm speaking ring true to you, and you say, you know what, I have a constant threat in my world, this that he's saying is ringing to that, call the Family Crisis Center. They're there for you. This is what this is all about, is being able to understand, recognize the threats in our day-to-day world as well as the escalated world, and being able to analyze them. Is this something I need to escalate or de-escalate? Escalation has many facets. It may be to where you have to react with deadly force. It may be where you have to evacuate yourself from the situation. That's where the Family Crisis Center comes into play. They have a location and a facility to be able to allow you to take that step away from a threat. That's what this is all about.